Aloha. Today I wanted to do a quick follow-up in reference to the little documentary I put together, the Beast program, and really just kind of share my thoughts real quick on how I am seeing this, and how it gets the story that we live in this human experience that gets sectioned off. The divide and conquer program exists on so many levels. We can only really comprehend so much, and in reference to how we perceive our reality, just as one individual who speaks one language can really only listen to another individual telling them that a story in their language. The same thing goes for the language of experience, how we are raised, how our parents were raised and their generations before them, what they had to experience, and so on and so forth. So everything is a language. The word itself is how we experience and expand this consciousness that we are loving and really tapping into the depths of the spiritual spaces of the alchemical experience that we exist as, so we can understand that we're not the body on so many levels. If in any level, it's the minute percentage of who and what we really are. When you understand that when you die, you don't die. Your spirit lives on somewhere else. This body dies because it exists in this physical reality. So there's something to do with time and our experience, and the so-called powers that be, or the entities behind the veil, understand this relationship that we as conscious individuals or spiritual energies having a physical experience, our relationship to our experience and power and energy relates to our knowledge of self, the word, language, consciousness, the subconscious, the conscious reality. All of these are alchemical algorithms to how we experience our reality. And depending on the level of consciousness which we are at, we will accept what we are energetically open to accepting. Or just as you can understand, like the quote that says something to the extent of, nothing that gets presented to you in your reality is out of your control. Not necessarily control, but you're never sent anything that you can't handle, pretty much. And as a collective, we have been handling and have been presented with some really fucked up programs over time. Our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, generations down the line. You can go into slavery, you can go into the genocides and the massacres. You can label it whatever you want. You can label the bad guys. You can say the Zionists, you can say the Jesuits, you can say the cabal, you can say whatever it is that you want. Like when I was in the Occupy movement, or the Occupy time frame, the bad guys were the bankers, and that was like the focus. But that was what was also being manipulated to be it was the control grid. It was the control design. So as long as you have control of the dialogue, as long as you have control of the language, the actual word is energy, then you are able to control the individual and the collective just as much as you can see as the knowledge of self that gets manipulated through public education system up into the university, up into the American dream, up until somebody becoming the CEO of a superpower corporation that contributes to the poisoning of millions of people and billions of people. Like, that's an entire program that gets learned from within the system of separation. And the only way we can do that is if we lose ourselves at some point in time. When I was 17 and I went into the army, I had no understanding of what self was. In fact, I was in such a kind of fucked up reality at that time, to where it's like you have no options. Like, you either go to community college, or you find a job, or you try to hustle on the streets, whatever it is. Those were those were the options. And then the other option was going to the military. And then, so that was the hardest option to take. And me and a couple of my friends took that option at the same time. And that's basically what happens, is that you get chatteled into this box of a lack of options, based upon what your generations before you were subject to. And that's an actual alchemy, when you understand that it relates to not only the individual but the collective. Separating an individual from the knowledge of self, separating an individual from nature and from spirit and from their own power, their own inner fire. That's an actual thing that exists in the ethers. And the so-called powers that be, when you take it to the umpteenth degree, I don't care what you want to call it, what you want to label them. I'm interested in the stories and how the stories look. Some people, like I said, people get caught up in, like when I was in the Occupy, I get caught up in it was only the bankers, it was only about money. But I knew it was something more about that. This is when I had no idea about the spiritual warfare that is going on. I mean, I could see it, but I couldn't really comprehend it. It was literally like a new language for me. Like, I couldn't understand what that language was. So I had to go within myself in order to understand what that language is. So that is the beginning of opening up to what a knowledge of self is. And I didn't really go into that space until I was able to stop myself and ask myself, what am I really doing here? What am I, like, after the occupied time frame, what am I asking for? What am I looking for? What do I want to accomplish? What do I want to change? And everything that needed to change first inside of me before I could start looking outside of whatever myself, to start interacting with other individuals. Because I was out there with a megaphone talking about, the banks took, our job, our bankers get bailed out, and then, like, we got laid off, and like all these little catchphrases that people can understand in like a quick little moment that you catch them on the street. But really the story is bigger than that. And each individual is interpreting that story in their reality through time, through their generations and their genetic codes, their actual crystal algorithms. Everybody's doing that organically. So the corporation perspective is actually like a synthetic version of what's happening on the organic spiritual plane of separation. And that's pretty much what the documentary that I put, the Beast program, is about. And the separation from knowledge of self is a separation from your ancestors, a separation from your culture, a separation from your original plan that your original music that you came into this physical reality to play before you got manipulated into the illusion of this whole program and how it's designed. And the way the design works is based upon, just like a kidnapper, like the Stockholm Syndrome. So a kidnapper kidnaps a kid, sticks that kid in a hole, feeds that kid like garbage, and dirty water and whatever else that gets fed to that kid. And then over time, that living in a hole, eating that garbage and drinking that dirty water becomes normal. It becomes the program. You become locked into that normalization program, and you become separated from that which is natural, from that which is organic, that which is at your spiritual core. So you get locked into the physical reality because that's the only thing that you have to base your reality on, existing in this time of the past, present, and future. So your past, you can't go into the depths of, from the child's perspective, the kid doesn't want to go into the past that exists with their family because it hurts too much to understand those connections, to trigger those emotional patterns in their moment of the present moment, to deal with what their present moment is limited to. So the limitation program is hand in hand with the separation program, which locks the psyche, the subconscious, and the conscious reality into existing in this distraction of, well, our history starts here, our present moment, technology, innovation is at here, and our future is based upon here. 20 years from now, we're going to go to Mars. 20 years from now, we're going to do, 40 years from now, we're going to do this. This is how the mainstream media, the mainstream university system, the mainstream public education system designs our entire psyche, our spiritual psyche, like our essence, our soul essence, our harmonics, the radio waves, the radio that we are collectively and individually gets limited. The antenna gets cut. So that's exactly what happens when your hair gets cut off when you go into the military. The antenna gets shortened, cut, and you are only told about a certain amount of radio stations. You're only told about, 106 KMEL, 94.9, and 98.1 on the radio station. When you have an infinite number of radio stations that you can tune into only if you spoke the language with your antenna. If you had the antenna to listen to those radio stations, then you would be able to turn into or tune into those frequencies, which are the frequencies of your ancestors, your guides, your spirits, your soul journey. And what happens is we get locked into the limited version of our radio stations when our antennas get cut by the normalization program, by the self-hatred program, and everything else that gets pumped out into the mainstream plastic synthetic version of reality. The science community is pumping out as innovation. So they tell you about the evolution program in so many ways by these subliminal messages through your television, your cartoons, your movies, and in your education system. So you think you're a monkey mind working in the innovative space of science and technology, and that's a bubble. Like, you can't get, it takes a while to get out of that bubble because you have to realize the entire system is designed from that bubble having to exist as a big part of your reality. Like, a really good friend of mine was really into technology and science and that whole thing, and then when he realized that our reality is beyond our reality is beyond the physical reality, is beyond this Elon Musk sort of Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye ridiculous version of reality, and you start to make connections with your spirit, then you start to have a relationship. You can speak the language of nature. You can listen more. You can feel more. You can understand, and overstand more of your reality. And that's basically what this entire design of the synthetic version of reality is based upon, separating you from. If you don't know where you came from, if you don't know who you are, you get locked in this Stockholm program. You get stuck in that hole of reality, that box. And then you start to celebrate your kidnappers. You start to think that's who cares for you. That's your family. And you separate yourself completely from your original family because that's actually much more comfortable. And then to the extreme, people don't want to leave. And that's where we are times the umpteenth degree from generations. Our grandparents, our parents, our great grandparents locked into the religious programming, the church that used to be whipped into the slaves to confess their life or whatever to their God. And which is the same thing that happened to the Native Americans when Columbus came over here and did all this other stuff. And it's selling you an illusion. So instead of selling you with just stealing you, like kidnapping you, they sell it to you with gold and trinkets and toys and Christmas and Thanksgiving, and then tell you don't like Christmas, you're not selling, you're an outsider, you're a bad guy, something's wrong with you. And when we don't understand that our ancestors already had a natural system of relating to our reality, then we separate ourselves from our roots, we separate ourselves from our potential, and we separate ourselves from the so-called future, like what radio stations, what music we can play within those radio stations, and building bigger antennas. See, our innovation, what's called innovation today, is based upon building Lego antennas. So we're building like Lego antennas, calling that the innovation. When you building a Lego antenna is like building like the monkey mind radio. The monkey mind, and that monkey mind radio, the future of that monkey mind radio is transhumanism and whatever kind of bogusness they're going to try to pull off with CERN. So they tell you it's all about innovation. They say this is your innovation, and if you're against innovation, you're against the system, you're against, or if you're against science, then you're against innovation, and innovation is the extension of humanity. So something's wrong with you. So in order to make that, in order to lock down the counterbalance to that, the polar opposite of that, they have to attack the spirit. And in the way they attack the spirit is through religion. They say, oh, well, religion is just about, the book and all this other. So they dog down religion. And then the baby that gets thrown out with the religious bathwater is the spirit, your soul. So people just get comfortable with that because it's too much to understand religion, understand science, understand your ancestors. You don't want to do any of that work because you're already too consumed with the normalization program of just trying to make it to achieve your human resources. So you just submit your soul innovation to your kidnappers, and the kidnappers just continue to enslave your children. So they kidnap your children and then your children's children with more trinkets and toys from more holidays and more iPhones and more television shows and more movies and more superheroes that are based upon not you and not your ancestors, and exactly a polar opposite of the whole history as a whole. So you get your time, the way we experience our reality, consciousness, the infinite consciousness, spirit, soul, body connection in time gets manipulated when we get told, oh yeah, we're gonna go to Mars in 20 years. We're gonna go. Star Trek makes you believe that shit, and then Star Wars reinforces that in your head and also subconsciously sells you these awakening stories. The Force Awakens, and then you start believing. You live. Your soul starts to live vicariously. You live vicariously through your soul lives vicariously through the normalization program, and then your body is just along for the ride, and then your body gets sucked down, sick and disease, which also helps the system expand upon your sickness and disease. So your sickness and disease exists not only in your body, but in your psychology and in your relationship to your past, present, and your future. So if you're just like you, and people are, when you can understand that there's so many people that are sick on a regular basis. Like, you get sick far too often. They call it a season, like the flu season, like that. Like, people already are planning their consciousness. Oh, here goes the fucking flu season. There's these signs. All right, I better go get my shot. And they're sticking the flu virus and everything else inside your body, and then telling you this is for your benefit. And then every year you get on this stick me with whatever it is you say, master, needle pusher, and we'll do it. And that's what happens in the military. The soldiers have mandatory vaccines. They balled us up into these like, go to, as a company, to the gym and go get a mass vaccine, a mass shots. I mean, there were times where you're getting like 7 shots in one day. It's ridiculous. But that's the normal program. And just like these debit cards with these chips, which were first on the chips were first on the ID cards and the soldiers, now they're starting to do this with vaccines. So they sell it in slowly but surely, and then they make it mandatory by having you believe that this is what the innovative system is about. And you only believe it because you are separated from your ancestors. You are separated from the lies and the genocide and the massacres that are right at the infrastructure of this entire thing. And then we get caught up fighting ourselves. Oh, well, it's not white people. It's not this. It's not that. I'm never saying that it's any one thing. I'm sharing information from what these stories have presented over time. See, we get caught up in the labels of Jesuits, saying the bad guys are the Jesuits, the bad guys are the Zionists, the bad guys are the Cabal, the bad guys are the aliens, the extraterrestrials, the reptilians. You get whatever story it is that you want to believe in, or that you are comfortable with believing in, whatever language that you speak. If you speak science fiction, then you'll be more prone to accept the Anunnaki story, or like whatever. If you're ancient aliens, you whatever perspective it is. The point is to get you caught up in that and get separated from the entire storyline of your potential as an individual and as a collective as a whole. And then they got you. So as long as you're fighting yourself, like, how many different factions of the so-called black consciousness community exists? There's so many different factions that are out there, when we don't realize the connections that are the 90th percentile of the storyline. We're more caught up in, like, oh, well, this is how the story is, and that's how, instead of understanding how all these stories relate to themselves, we have to convince each other and ourselves of the individual story as if that's the way it is. We can't let go of, how these other stories all fit together, or how we can't let go of how we understand a particular language, instead of understanding how all these languages or stories fit together. And this comes from decades, generations, up to the individual, actual years, to where you're 5 years old and you go to kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, all the way to 12th grade. You got 13 years of separating you from your knowledge of self, separating you from your ancestors, separating you from nature, and separating you from your family, your mother, your father, your brothers and sisters. Those all are inherently disastrous to the relationship that the individual has with himself or herself, and the relationship that that individual has with their family, their culture. And then to boot, simultaneously, they get installed one version of reality that actually makes them further hate themselves even more so. And then when they graduate, then they can go into the university system and learn whatever. It's a systematic takedown from every angle of reality. Meanwhile, we are being told to hate ourselves, and we are being sold shit like BMW. This called innovation. This is the monkey mind innovation, making a motorcycle that just stands up straight. Like all the fucking hunger and the lack of clean water, the genetically modified foods, the vaccines, the sickness and disease, the chemtrails, everything that you can imagine that's going on. This is like Christmas. This BMW, having this lady sit on top of a motorcycle and it doesn't fall off. Congratulations. Great job. You did it, monkey mind. You did it. I can't believe it took us this long to make a fucking motorcycle that doesn't fall over. How much? $1 billion. Well, none of us peasants can get any of that until about, 2030. This is how our time gets stolen. This is how our energy, our fire gets manipulated to just die out. And once our fire gets manipulated to die out, we start to keep other people down around us and fight ourselves. And this is how the divide and conquer program works. Is that since you can't do anything about the system as a whole, you have to create your own little kingdom or your own little queendom. And then you have to be the master or the master of that universe, because your true universe, the our universe, is controlled by a magic that we have been duped into thinking that we can't do anything about, and thinking that if we do anything about it, then it's so much more than that. And then we get locked into the division program. It's like, oh, it's about race. Oh, it's not about race. And then, oh, well, it is about race, but it's not. See, all these little programs that exist within, they're boxes within boxes within boxes within boxes, and all of those boxes have a meaning. They have a purpose. They're involved in the entire storyline in some kind of way. So like when I start speaking about how the white supremacy program specifically focuses on the melanated peoples, the indigenous peoples, the aboriginal peoples around the earth plane, then that gets attacked by people saying, oh no, well it's about the Zionists or the Jesuits, or it's about, the cabal, it's about this, the aliens, or it's about this. Like, so all these various storylines exist on some kind of way, but that doesn't negate the fact that the white supremacy program exists. We jump from story to story because those are the languages that we speak. So if we start speaking all these different languages, then we'll be able to understand the alchemical language that is designed to work against the divide and conquer program of the individual and the collective. So there's an algorithm to this whole this whole slut walk that's out there. Like this slut walk that's going against, or that's talking about, like, we need more people talking about, rape victims and the rape culture and all this other stuff. That directly ties into, so you get these celebrities like Amber Rose out there, who's like an ex-stripper. Now she's like a celebrity now. So now people are looking up to strippers. They're looking up to because they're out there speaking for issues that matter. And then the whole time not really seeing the entire patriarchal program, not seeing the entire how all the other stories relate to that. The Christopher Columbus story, the colonization program. This is a colonizing of the mind. All of these programs are connected. They have focus groups. They have a broad spectrum approach, like a full spectrum approach and an individualistic approach, all at the same time. So you have these various layers, like the slut walk and women walking around calling themselves slut and calling themselves bitch to make a point, not realizing that this exists energetically. Women showing their titties, talking about freedom, we should all be equal. This all has an energy. You are paying into this program when you have the potential to go so far beyond to speak a language that encompasses that language. When you get caught up in that box, you just take your shirt off, show your titties, and then you are a king or a queen in that box. You are now free, but within a box. But if you were to understand and overstand that you are in a box and that there are other realities that exist outside that box, other languages, other radio stations that you could tap into to share that same story, to expand that same idea outside, to share that times 10, times 100, times 1,000, that same reality. If we were to tap into that individually and collectively, that's when you can't be fucked with. But that's why we are bombarded by these box within boxes and these idols that represent these celebrities that represent these particular boxes. So this is what these celebrities are out there talking about, voting and all this stuff. They're telling you to give your energy, give your power away through a specific channel in a specific box. So you have the gay agenda, does the same thing. It locks down a certain version of reality, a certain chakra center, a whole bunch of different chakra centers. It relates to how you experience your reality. All of this is to lock down your time, your past, present, and your idea of the future. So if you have no connection with your past, then you have no understanding of the present moment, and then you won't be able to understand what it is your future is to be, because you are constantly giving your present moment and your possibilities within the future to other entities or other energy centers. Or if you're capable of tapping into that space, because we are distracted so much, which is now the main program. Just like the Stockholm syndrome of the child that was kidnapped, that child is now past the fighting the kidnapper and is now in the system of, well, let's just be cool with this, and it's actually okay, and we're all right. Everything is fine. Everything is just okay. You have been systematically locked into a program that now you hate yourself. You hate the essence, the soul essence of yourself, and you have now been locked into the system of dirty water and garbage food, living in a hole. And you've gold-plated that hole. You've put all kinds of seasoning and ketchup and hot sauce on top of that garbage food, and you've put some Kool-Aid inside of that dirty water, that lead-based water, all that, and calling that, that's reality. This is what soul food is. That's all what soul food is. When you eat soul, that's not nothing for your soul. That's why they gotta call it soul food. It's not for your soul. It's for the. It's not for the benefit of your soul. It's for the actual the separation from your soul. So, all of these agendas, social media, dealing with the insecurities, amplifying the separation, the synthetic version of reality. Hollywood, public education, dumbs down the culture, dumbs down your knowledge of self. You don't have any knowledge of self. You have knowledge of Snooki and Amber Rose and Kim Kardashian. That's the knowledge that you have. You have knowledge of apps on your phone and Snapchat and Facebook, and you have knowledge of that. You have no knowledge of self. The New Age, you have knowledge of aliens. You have knowledge of disclosure. You have knowledge of, which is just power, an idea of power. Weak spirits, locking down the spiritual connection. And all this comes from the lack of root structure, lack of knowing who and what you are, lack of understanding the depths of love for yourself, which will help you love another person or love your family, love somebody, love a stranger. Like love, like true essence of love, like Professor Baina Bello expressed, there's a different, not love in the mouth, but love, like actual love, that real shit that exists, that's beyond any kind of language, really. It's a more of a feeling, something that you can taste, that you can feel, that you can express, but it really can't be locked down to any kind of one version of reality. You can feel like when you say love, like that's an actual thing that exists. People say, oh, love of Valentine's Day and diamonds and chocolate and get married and teddy bears and all that other shit. That's like Christmas love. Like that's like Thanksgiving Day love, turkey love. It's garbage. If you don't know yourself, you can't love yourself. You can't love yourself. You won't be able to love any part of your reality or experience any part of your reality. It'll all just be garbage. This is what the New Age program is about. It's about this love and light. It has nothing to do with love. Like fucking love. Who you are. Who are you? What are all these stories and how they exist together? Not love. The aliens are going to come, the extraterrestrials are going to come down, and they're going to save everything, just like blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus was supposed to do in the book that was given to us by the people who enslaved the entire earth plane. It's like that. The water that we drink, the liquid crystal that we are, is being poisoned, literally. Let me play this video while I'm at this point right now, to share more of this storyline of how this works. Like, this is an actual system that has a focus. It has an actual focus. And the old schools have been understanding and seeing this focus. Yes, the story is more intricate and designed and all kinds of other ways. But to listen to this information that's being said, that's going to be said right now, to feel this and realize that there is a reason why the indigenous people were genocided and massacred, why the Aboriginal Australians were almost brought to the brink of extinction by the colonial program, why the supremacy program exists, why it has a focus. Not saying that just because its focus is on the melanated people that it's all about the non-melanated people. No, because once you get all the way to the top of the pyramid, you start narrowing it down, and it's just really about the people who have, the entities who have separated themselves from spirit, who mean to convince you to separate yourself from spirit. Yes, the factions that exist within the pyramid space up until that pinnacle exist, have a focus, and do need to be mentioned. Yes, they do. They are part of the storyline, and it will be addressed as we start to disassemble this entire separation program. But and at the same time, you have to see how all these stories fit together. So when I talk about the colonial program and white supremacy, or if Dick Gregory talks about the colonial program and white supremacy and how it exists in the past, in the present, and in our ideas of the future, then it is up to the individual and eventually the collective to figure out how that fits in the entire dialogue of this divide and conquer program. Not to just say, oh, well, it's not just that, it's not them, it's this and this and this. No, that's part of it. Thank you for adding that to the storyline, but there's more. Here's one part of the storyline that Baba Dick Gregory is sharing with people, and I would like to share it with you because it affects not only certain factions, but this is everybody, and at the same time it shows you how it also does have a focus. There is a focus of these storylines and how they fit together.
What are you putting in my malt liquor, white boy? What are you putting in? Huh? Hear me. And it's your fault too. Malt liquor is made by white companies, but only sold in black neighborhoods, and you ain't checked it to see what's in it. Huh? How much lead are you putting in my neighborhood? Lead affects my thinking capacity. Lead is only one thing on the planet more dangerous than lead, and that's manganese. Manganese will make you kill your mama. And let me tell y'all something. If you want to see the largest homicide rate in the world, it ain't in no black ghetto in America. It's a little town in Australia where them white folks' homicide rate is 200 times what their population is. And that town just happened to be located across the street from a manganese plant. Here you go, Bubba. Here, right here.
Sit back down, Dick. Don't lose that mic. Yeah.
That town is located across the street from a manganese plant. How much manganese are you spraying in my neighborhood at night while I'm...
So that storyline, the manganese, the lead, the FDA with your food and your drugs, the EPA, the Federal Reserve, all these programs that are supposedly designed for you regulate this stuff. The criminalization of cannabis, all the stuff that exists to keep individuals sick and part of this program. This is the actual kidnapper that has convinced us that this is our reality. This is our innovation. So your enslavement is the innovation of this program, and your doggy treats that you get fed on a regular basis are part of this. Like and it goes all the way to the kid, like that hurricane poster in there. I remember having a hurricane malt liquor poster in my room when I was in high school. We lived right across the street from a liquor store. I used to always go in there, talk to Sam, and Sam used to get all these lights and posters and all this other stuff, and I was like, oh man, that's a nice poster. He's like, oh, you can have it. So malt liquor a malt liquor poster, and we don't realize that this is how far this programming goes. Manganese inside of the malt liquor, lead inside of the water, lead inside of the paint. The paint chips off. Kids eat paint, lick the walls. And that's not even the biggest part. The biggest part is that the dust, when that paint dries and it exists, like all the homes in Oakland and Berkeley and the Bay Area, all those homes, they all had those old school Victorians. They were all lead-based paint homes. I don't think that has an actual, like the individuals, the Sherwin-Williams company that was actually built on top of ancient burial grounds right down the street in Emeryville. You don't think when they was putting lead in that paint that they knew that was going to be harmful to the children, harmful to the community? No, that was an intention. It was on purpose. Just as there's an intention and a purpose to putting manganese in malt liquor, putting commercials about malt liquor in music videos, rap videos, hip hop videos, putting millions of liquor stores in the inner cities, no supermarkets in the inner cities. This all has an intent. So when people say white supremacy doesn't exist, white privilege doesn't exist, please shut that shit up. There's an intention here. And then the other people say, oh, well, it's really the real bad guys and all this other stuff is the Jesuits and the Zionists. Yes, you can label whatever you want. What I'm saying is that there is still a kid right now that is looking up to being 21 someday, who's going to the liquor store to get their dinner and their lunch every day, looking up to being 21 just so they can drink their first 40 of malt liquor. Poison themselves. Right now, they're being poisoned right now, psychologically, so they can physically poison themselves in the future. This is how this program works. And until, if we don't get out of trying to sound how right we are about, oh, well, it's these people. It's these people. Well, what fucking good does that make? If you don't understand how deep the story goes and how it's all interacted, it doesn't make any difference. If you don't have your brothers and sisters around you knowing the story and how it all fits together, if they're just so distracted and caught up in the story altogether, so confused, insecure, locked down, having no knowledge of self. You can call whoever you want, whatever you want, but if you don't have any knowledge of self, knowledge of the story, if you can't speak the language, then it doesn't make any damn difference. You're still going to be subject to this story. You're still going to be subject to the box within the box. So we start breaking these boxes and then start piecing them together, then we'll start realizing what's going on. Now, oh, we got to get caught up in, taking care of my family, falling in love, doing all this. You can multitask. You can take care of your family and in fact, taking care of your family and having knowledge of self is actually a better way, a deeper way of taking care of your family. It's a deeper layer. So there are no excuses for not having knowledge of self. There are no excuses for not knowing the depths of the storyline and not connecting the dots. The only excuses that we believe to be true are because we figured it out. We got it. In fact, you will never get it. This physical vessel is only, it's for building. It's a building block vessel for consciousness. It's not meant to inhabit all that is in that one moment consciously, because that's what your dreams are. That's why dreams are so intense. That's why, like, when you experience grief or fear in dream spaces, they're so intense. You pop right out of that dream because you are experiencing every single wavelength of the emotional spectrum in that one dream moment. So the physical reality is a step down from that in order for us to have a linear idea of experiencing this reality with inhabiting the energies of the infinite space. And understanding the relationship between true science, organic science, and the spirit is the alchemy that our ancestors understood. And our ancestors, generations upon generations before this, took it to the max of the golden ages and were living individually and collectively on those spaces and helping people grow, expand consciousness, rather than utilizing that information, utilizing that magic, that alchemy for the benefit of the self. This is what this energy of these entities behind the scenes have done. They divide and conquer. So just as easily as they divided northern Africa from southern Africa and said these are the northern Sahara, the North Sahara, and the sub-Saharan Africa. And oh, well, this is Egypt. Oh, those are those Egyptians up there. They ain't African no more. No, this is Nubia. This is the Kushites. This is all it. Like those separates. Those labels separate us. And then when it's taken to the extreme, and then amplified by the artificial ego, then that's when it starts to work against itself. The divide and conquer starts to eat itself. And then you can install all kinds of sickness, disease programs, the Federal Reserve, the university system, the globe model, CERN. You can install whatever you want in there once the instability is made. And that's what happens. But the people who remember, they understand their connections and the entire storyline. They understand the relationships between the indigenous and aboriginal people in the Americas, South America, North America, Central America, in Australia, in Asia, in all over the world. We are connected in more ways than we are separated. And the Divide and Conquer program is meant to focus on not only the ways that we are separated, but the ways that we are separated that are beneficial for the system at any one moment. And then that just gets amplified with the media and all that other stuff. So we don't understand what today is, because we don't understand what yesterday is. And there's only yesterday and today based upon our memories. Like our memory is the history, or our story. And if our story, our roots are manipulated or destroyed, then you won't know what today is or this moment is. And then you won't be able to understand what tomorrow is, or your fruits, the tree to your fruits. So once we get manipulated to think and act that certain way, then that's when we start to fight amongst ourselves. And then if you fight amongst yourselves, then you need a good guy. So we're the bad guys. Now we need the good guy, the savior mentality to come save everything. The Christopher Columbus. That's not what they were inventing the dividing program for. That's not what they were amplifying that program for. They were amplifying it for themselves to come out as the victor in the end. And then you won't be told about these stories. You'll only be told one side of the story, half the story at best. And then the past doesn't even matter anymore. And that's basically what this whole Beast program is about. Amplifying of technology. So the so-called innovation in the forward progress is about technology. And the bad guy for science is religion. So they're saying religion is the bad guy because religious, and you can't like say they're wrong in so many ways, because more people being killed in the name of religion or the religious guy than anything else ever. So that makes science the superhero, the good guy. Oh, well, they're saying something that's true. Oh, the scientists are atheists too? Oh, great. Well, there goes God. There's the baby out with the bathwater. And that's individually and collectively. And when there's that separation happens, then you have to install the new program. The new program is this transhumanism, artificial intelligence, synthetic, mainstream, illusory reality, fiat currency reality. But it's all being seen for what it is now, because nothing synthetic will ever be able to exist in the organic reality for very long. Once it's seen for what it is, then it will deteriorate. It will die quickly. But we have to first see what it is. and then expand our organic reality, which will overtake the synthetic reality. So that's basically it. Thank you for joining me, and until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.